The transition to democracy in Egypt hasn't been easy. The military ousted the president, and then they themselves were later ousted a little over a month later. With an election on the horizon, Egyptians hope that they will get the democracy they've been searching for. The question then is, will they keep it? First, a bit of history. On June 30th, 2013, millions of Egyptians protested against the government in the streets. They demanded that the president, Mohamed Morsi, step down. Morsi was the first democratically elected president of Egypt, but was also a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Some considered him to be an Islamist dictator and wanted new elections. 3 days later, the Minister of Defense and several religious leaders of Egypt announced that the president had been ousted. Upon hearing this news, many different reactions spread across the country. Cheering crowds came together in Tahrir Square, while supporters of the Brotherhood met to call for the return of who they thought was the legitimate president. On August 14, 2013, Egyptian forces began to get rid of all Brotherhood sit-ins. Hundreds were killed, which led to more violence in the streets. All Islamic television stations were closed, and Brotherhood leaders were jailed. Laws were even passed banning protests on limited political freedom. However, the violence did not stop. Brotherhood sympathizers continued to protest their beliefs. Anti-government groups led more attacks on the military and government, leaving more deaths in its wake. The interim government declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, therefore criminalizing all of its members. Today, Egypt has a republican and semi-presidential government. However, it is only considered provisional. A constitution was signed in 2012, but the military suspended it in June of 2013. The current head of state is President Adli Mansour, and the head of government is interim Prime Minister Hazim El-Bedwali. The president is democratically elected, and there is universal suffrage. There is a bicameral legislature consisting of the People's Assembly and the Consultative Council. The judicial branch consists of the Court of Cassation and the Supreme Constitutional Court. An essential to a liberal democracy is legitimacy. Where exactly is the legitimacy in Egypt? During the Morsi presidency, the people protested that they were the ones with the country's legitimacy, not the president. A new constitution was put up to a vote in January of this year. This put the military government's legitimacy to the test. The referendum passed with 98.1% of the votes, and 38.6% of the voting population went to the polls. This is the highest voter turnout in Egypt's history. However, the anti-coup alliance, which is made up of Brotherhood and Morsi supporters, stated that 98.1% is not a true democracy, but a solo dictatorship. Nevertheless, the Constitution was put in place. United States Secretary of State John Kerry believed that this Constitution was a positive milestone in Egypt's transition. But is this transition working? Political scientists argue that Morsi's election was a setback to democratic progress because of his affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood. Politician Amr Hamzamwe believes that Morsi should have been taken out of the government democratically, and the act of ousting led to the problems later seen. He thinks that the ouster set Egypt back to the Mubarak era of limited civil rights and freedoms. There is also a question to how international forces can help with this transition. Many believe that the international support for Egyptian democracy will help speed up the transition. The United States and many European states have contemplated suspending economic aid to Egypt. However, this could be viewed as support for the Brotherhood instead of support for the people. This would also lead to a larger Eastern influence on Egypt as opposed to a Western influence, thus possibly undermining a potential democracy. Nevertheless, the international community needs to show their support for a liberal democracy in Egypt. Last week, Egypt had a presidential election. Field Marshal Abdel Fattah Sisi won by a landslide with more than 90% of the votes. This opens a new chapter in Egyptian democracy. The voter turnout was about 46%, higher than that of the referendum in January of this year. The Muslim Brotherhood boycotted the election, claiming that it was unjust and illegitimate. Al-Sisi was the frontrunner of the election for months. Egyptians everywhere knew he would win. Many believe that he has the people's best interest in mind, and he will help bring Egypt to a new era of democracy and equality. However, some people are still skeptical. As seen in the past, Egyptian history tends to repeat itself. Some even want Morsi back in power because they know what they will be getting into. Egypt has been transitioning from an autocracy to a theocracy and now to a democracy. Each transition has been more violent than the last, with the Muslim Brotherhood constantly in the background. Can the people handle more violence from the Brotherhood? The United States has also tried to implement its democratic customs on Egypt, but that hasn't always worked. Will al-Sisi be the savior that the Egyptians are asking for, or will he impose the military and create another dictatorship? Only time will tell.